What's up, IT friends? Happy Tuesday. How you doing? At Helped, and honestly at most of your companies, we support people. That's really what this industry is about, and what MSPs really do, I think, a little differently than internal IT departments. We really do directly support humans. And one of the things that I find happens a lot, not just in this space, so I'm not blaming anybody here, is we like to try to reduce humans into groups to make information easily digestible and understandable for our brains. It's how humans work. I get it. It's a thing we do. What I am getting a little sick and tired of hearing about, and I want to talk a little bit about today, because I think it might be limiting your success with some of the humans that you manage and you support, is this idea of consistently trying to classify the age banding of people to somehow interpret why you can and can't interact with them. Yes, this is a video on why y'all need to stop talking and complaining about millennials and boomers and Gen Z, mostly millennials. I went to college the first time in 2002. I'm 40. I'm also a millennial. So when I see somebody who's, I don't know, in their mid 40s, say in my presence how frustrating it is to manage their millennial staff, I can't roll my eyes hard enough, because that's me. And well, I've met a lot of you, and a lot of you that are complaining about a lot of me are in no position to be complaining about managing anybody. You can't manage to program a VCR, Grandpa. Never mind a millennial. I don't think it's a millennial thing. Let's talk more about that. So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, there's just a thing where we tend to take rough bandings of generations, approximately 20 years of birth. We'll assign a name to them, and then we assign a whole bunch of completely undeserved culture attributes, which are really more, I struggle to understand young people than they are actual meaningful cultural attributes, but we will trip over ourselves to try and justify it. Some examples, we've got the silent generation. That was the generation my father was from. So, you know, he was born right before World War II. After that, we've got the baby boomer generation, which, just very quickly, for anybody who does not understand what that is, because that term gets used way too much, after World War II ended, so 1946, my friends, when everybody came back home and the economy in the United States and Canada was not completely in shambles, we had an explosion of families, hence a baby boom. So baby boomers were born from 1946 up until roughly the mid 60s. That's it. The likelihood that the person you're calling a boomer was actually a baby boomer is increasingly small every day you're in the workforce. Just so everybody knows that. I think at this point, a young baby boomer is probably in their like mid to late 50s at most, and is far more likely to be pushing their mid 70s. After that, we have the best generation, and the one I missed by like a year, Gen X. That's right, extreme. Generation X, that's your, mid 60s to your 80s. From there, we had millennials, the first and only generation that got to grow up with the immediate availability of information as that matured, which was super interesting. And then after millennials, of course, we have Gen Z, the Tide Pod generation. And now I think they have something new, even newer, Gen Alpha or whatever. So my point is, listing all that out, it doesn't matter. And yes, every single grouping of people, when they grow up and they have those foundational early adulting experiences, from when they're a teenager to their early 20s, I understand that does a lot to set your value proposition for the rest of your life. That value proposition has a lot more to do with who you were raised by, the family dynamic, and probably other factors, socioeconomic, political, geographical, way more than it does time period wise, because most of the things that modern humans care about, if you go back and look, modern humans have been caring about and complaining about these exact same things for at least the last like 300 years or so. At least since Victorian times, we've had the same complaints. You know, that workers have had the same complaints, employers have had the same complaints. This isn't a new thing. And this isn't reductively one generation or another. And so, like, I'll give a great example of that. So, like, I was looking at a post that was like millennial manager humor, and it was like, "Oh, I'm a millennial manager. Of course, I'll let you take the day off because your favorite orchid is going to be in bloom today." Har har har. And like, you're supposed to read that and be like, "Wow, those avocado toast millennials, what idiots to let somebody take a day off for something like a flower." But think about it, like Henry Ford started the whole 5-day work week to artificially craft this idea that if we gave people a break and they had more time on their break, they would consume and buy a Ford to be able to use on their break. So like this idea that treating your employees with a certain level of respect for what they do outside of work will have a increased benefit on their productivity when they're back at work. This isn't a new idea at all. It evolves because of course it evolves. Like you couldn't keep a regular person couldn't have kept an orchid at home in 1915. It would have died. We didn't have climate control. So yes, no one was asking to stay home for their orchids at the turn of the century. But the point is that an employer pragmatically trying to balance their employees' work-life balance so they can function better at work is not a new concept. The man has been manipulating you this way since the dawn of time. So that's not a millennial thing. That's just a competent manager understanding the dynamics of their employees thing. So where are we going with this? I find that a lot of behaviors that are really down to relationship mismatches, and I tend to talk more about management, but you'll find the same thing in sales engagements. We like to blame on grouping biases, like they're a millennial, they're a boomer. That's just how they think. But that's very reductive, and it causes us to miss out on an opportunity to actually refine our approach and our ability to interact with other people. So instead of saying they're a boomer, they don't know what they're doing, how about I need everybody to be able to comfortably type at 45 words per minute or faster? Because isn't that really what shows somebody's computer or technology literacy, not how old they are? In the same vein, you often hear one of the founders of Helped will point out that there's a lot of now young people who don't know how to type at all, who probably can't type 45 words per minute because they've literally never had to interact with the keyboard. Everything's been tablet based or speech to text. See how right away, by putting what I actually am looking for in a candidate, it allows me not only to appropriately select based on the skills the job needs and not apply any sort of bias, but more importantly, it allows you to train the person on the skills that are missing, rather than just saying that group of people is untrainable because they belong to a group, which you will notice is a very uncomfortable statement, because that's really what you're doing when you're doing age banding like this. You are feeding into a bias that causes you to make assumptions about everybody in that group and therefore miss out on the opportunity to appropriately address the individual's ability to learn, be upskilled, and manage to their most excellent potential. I am not saying everybody on your team is going to be an A player, but if you are not trying to top grade everybody on your team to their highest possibility of execution, what are you even doing? And if I just go, well, they're a millennial, so they're not motivated, or they're a boomer, they don't understand technology, or they're Gen X, they think everything is extreme, then I'm not ever going to get to a point where I'm properly managing getting the most out of my team, my clients, whatever the relationship is. And at the end of the day, that is what we are all here for. So going forward, the next time you go to read some sort of post on the internet that talks about, speaking to millennials or how to communicate to boomers or how to best get Gen Z to do this or how come Gen X is so weird like that, take it with a grain of salt and realize that really a bias is being fed into on purpose to get you to click that article. Young people are hard to understand sometimes. This has always been a problem humans have had in every culture. It's not a millennial thing, it's not a Gen Z thing. And older people have always been hard for young people to relate to. This isn't a, oh, boomers are out of touch thing. This is the thing that's existed since the dawn of time. Little Timmy had a hard time articulating why he wanted to go on this newfangled thing called trains to his parents, who were worried that his mother's guts might explode going 30 miles an hour on a train because old people couldn't understand Timmy's desire to go fast. This isn't a new thing. So let's just kind of calm down with using that language. And let's start focusing on trying to identify the wants, needs, and values of the actual people we're working with. And just do our best and communicate that we're doing our best to meet them on as even as a playing field as we can. Treat each other with respect. And I think we'll be all right. Because until we stop having young people and old people, which hopefully never happens, I don't really think this is a problem that is worth putting so many labels on and getting so fixated on when we're trying to manage our teams. Have a great Tuesday. Start blaming Gen X for more stuff. All right, it's enough blaming of millennials. No one ever gives Gen X a hard time, and it's all their fault. That's right, Zoomers. Go after Gen Xers.